10, 9, ignition sequence start. All engines are running.
Liftoff, and the clock is liftoff.
Roger, the clock is operating. We're underway.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
And as we suppress our overwhelming emotion, it's time now for Kerbalcast, episode 40, Live Long and Prosper.
Don't grieve, Admiral. It is logical. The needs of the many outweigh
The needs of the few.
or the one.
And I am your LMP, that's Lunar Module Pilot Biff Aldrin. With us as always, our CMP, Command Module Pilot.
Tromo.
And hanging on the outside of the cabin, banging on the window, we have a special guest today. Who is that?
Amy K.
Amy K. Amy K is joining us today. Coming up in today's program,
Homeworld, Tylo and Amazing Amy. It's our progress in the game.
and a 3D Kerbal. We'll have that and more in this week's mission briefing, featuring your letters, tweets, and an audio letter from Andy M.
Jeb goes spelunking. Find out about the smiley face on the mun in the latest episode of A Kerbal Life by Amy Kettlewell.
Amy, are your ears burning?
Oh, yes.
Of course. And goodbye, old friend. Stick around for after the credits as we pay tribute to Leonard Nimoy. Amy is a huge Star Trek fan. I am a huge Star Trek fan. Nos is a huge Star Trek fan. So I thought it would be appropriate if all three of us said goodbye to Leonard Nimoy and pay tribute to an amazing man and an amazing career. So that's why there are three of us on today's show. Amy is going to stick around. She's going to do progress report with us. Then she's going to go Kerbal, and then she's going to come back, and she'll be with us for after the credits. So, Amy, how are you doing?
Not bad, thanks.
Well, good. Well, how's life in the big UK?
Cold, wet, so usual.
Yeah.
But you're drinking tea, right?
I'm not drinking anything right now. I had a bit of squash, but it's gone now.
Okay. Well, Nos, how was your
I
week?
actually say cordial. Sorry. I saw Nos' confused face.
It's like you're drinking a vegetable. It's very healthy of you. It's very good.
I have a question for Amy. Does he look like Napoleon Dynamite?
No, more Michael Fassbender.
Really?
Yeah, I'll take that compliment any day. I will.
Really? Okay. Well, see, but I know you said I look like Walter White, so
Yeah.
Walter White and Michael Fassbender. So basically, this program is being hosted by two supervillains.
Yeah. I wasn't thinking of the Magneto angle. I was thinking of David 8, but that's cool too.
Yeah.
So
How could you not think of Magneto?
I was thinking of David from Prometheus.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. So he's my favorite character in the movie.
Well, you realize now we have to go watch Lawrence of Arabia.
Yeah. So
There's a reference.
So my week was hectic, and for all of you, it will be disappointing because I haven't had a chance to Kerbal yet. I pretty much just got right off the bus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your progress this week is a big fat zero.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry, guys. It was another one of those.
How dare you have a job?
Yeah. A very demanding job.
Yeah.
So
Well, it is snowing here. We are all snowed in, so it's a very cozy Kerbalcast. Amy, in honor of the fact that you have joined us as our special guest today, I'm going to go ahead and start with you on progress. First of all, I want to say this: just a couple of days ago was your birthday. So happy birthday, Amy!
happy birthday!
Yay!
Thank you.
Yay! And many more. How was that?
Very nice.
Okay.
Touching.
Yeah, well, I'm sure.
It was to Kerbalcast standards.
Well, there you go.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
There was no Diarrhea Planet, but...
Yeah. That low, huh?
Yeah.
And also, I want to congratulate you. I understand that you recently performed your first rendezvous. Is that correct?
Yes, that
Uh-oh.
is true.
Uh-oh.
There are loads of caveats going with that there.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to hear the caveats.
All right, first, I've done it twice. Once was immediately after I watched you do it.
Uh-huh.
And
Thank you, Steam.
And once was about a week later, and it was nowhere near as elegant. And they were both in the dirty world of sandbox mode.
Ah.
Okay, I have a challenge for you, Amy.
Where true players fear to tread.
That's true. Okay, here's my challenge. Here's my challenge for Amy, okay? The next time you perform Rendezvous, you have to have North Star watching.
I could actually do it now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but can you do it with North Star watching?
No, because I'm on a Mac and you can't watch people on the Mac.
Oh, that's
You
right.
can-
That's right.
You can watch other people on Steam, but you can't. It says coming soon for Mac. So
Oh.
Yeah, after last week's episode, North Star had to write me to let me know that he's well recovered from his heart attack from watching me Rendezvous.
Yeah.
That was so funny to go back, because I missed so much of what
Like
he
you
was
only
saying.
heard the good parts, and you
Yeah.
come back and you're like, oh.
Yeah, it's
Oh.
like, well, I saw like 1 in 5 comments he was making,
Yeah.
and then to go back and read that long stream of comments, and I mean, most of them were just, what are you doing? No, don't do that. What?
that's quite funny to listen to North Star's reaction to you watching you Rendezvous compared to my own when I was watching you Rendezvous, taking your word as gospel, making a sandwich, staring hard, studying the screen, noting down every little thing that you did.
Well, I've never claimed to be anything other than what I am, which is I'm a mid-level self-taught player. And, I do things in the game the way that I have figured them out. And over time, I refine the way I do things and I get better at them. So when you have a very advanced player watching, they're seeing you make a whole bunch of mistakes that they would never think to make. And, the fact that I had a permanent chat record of him
Yeah.
watching me and freaking out was just, because when I got done, I kind of, for a second there, I kind of felt like, yeah, I did a Rendezvous and, and I did it with North Star watching and I didn't embarrass myself. And then I pull up the window and went, oh, big ol' embarrassment. Absolutely embarrassed myself. Well, Amy, tell me about your progress. How far have you gotten since we last spoke?
Quite far. In fact, just as we got ready to start recording this podcast, I was just about to launch a monstrosity that I am pretty sure can get to Duna.
Ooh.
And
Is it actually called the HMS Monstrosity?
no, it's a lot more boring. I've called it Duna 1.
Oh, okay. Hey, why not, right?
But no, I really, really, really don't. I actually tweeted a picture out of my monstrosity, actually, so that'll be on Twitter. But I have decided that before I go through the arduous, heartbreaking, stressful task of Rendezvous, I'd try and build a monstrosity that can get from Kerbin to Duna in one shot. I'm like the queen of the one-shots, so I can get to everywhere and back.
It's the best way, because Rendezvous is messy business. So
Yeah.
if you can get there in one shot, it doesn't matter how big or expensive it was. It just matters that you got it over with.
So
It's doomed to failure, I'm sure, but I'm going to try. It's got a lot of Delta V, more Delta V than I've ever actually seen on a rocket in my game before.
How do you know how much?
11,500.
Good Lord.
Oh.
Wow, you're going to have to show me how you did that, because I told you I was trying to build an Eve, and it was saying 12,000 is what you needed, and I haven't been able to get above 9. So I'm curious how you did that.
Well, it's on Twitter, so but I've split it into 3 stages. I need it because I'm doing this all in Korea. It doesn't count for me unless I can do it in Korea. So I had to level up everything, and it was an absolute nightmare. And then when I thought I'd got all the pieces I need, I didn't have any docking things. And then, this is at the time I was going to try and Rendezvous. So I went to the Mun and back, and I was so close. And then I went to Minmus and back. And I got 1,000 science and 1.2 million funds from one trip to Minmus, and then I had everything. And then I decided to just not bother with Rendezvous and try my monstrosity.
Have you been to Duna before?
No, that's why I'm so desperate to go now.
Oh, okay.
I will crash on the surface, never come back, and I will deem it victory.
Duna is a very pretty planet. I wish there was more to do there, but it is a very pretty planet. I love going to Duna. So I think you'll be, I think when you see it, you're going to be kind of blown away.
Well, my plan, I'm pretty sure, I'm 90% sure, because I've looked at the subway map that shows all the Delta Vs, and I know it's slightly different with the VAR installed, but I think it's more or less right. So in theory, I have enough Delta V to get to Duna, even if I just orbit it and just go, wow, and take a few screenshots.
Yeah.
And I'm either going to, if I've got enough left, I'll come back or try. And if I don't, I'll go down and, just stay there forever until life support runs out.
Do you have a lander that's separate from an orbiting craft that you're going to go down and come back to, or are you literally going from Kerbin to Duna and back?
I have 4 stages in my monstrosity. The first one gets me up into space. The second one keeps going straight up until I leave Kerbin's sphere of influence. The third one, in theory, gets me around Duna and lands me on Duna. The fourth one gets me from Duna to Kerbin, in theory. That's my monstrosity. So
you're landing stages 3 and 4 on Duna and then returning with stage 4. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I realize I guess they're in reverse order, aren't they? Aren't technically? No, that's not. That wouldn't be correct. You are coming back with the 4th stage, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I need something to land. Otherwise, it's just flinging a Kerbal out the.
I get confused. Sometimes they order them from top to bottom. Where the top stage is stage 1, But no, that's
okay, yeah.
From bottom to top, you're coming back with stage 4. So you're taking 3 and 4 down and coming back with 4. I got you. Okay. Well, that'll be. Do you have a question? Do you have a parachute for Duna?
In my test run, I forgot the parachute.
Okay.
In my second test run, I forgot the landing legs. But in my third test run, I haven't had my third test run. My third test run is going to be the real thing, but I can't think of anything I've forgotten. I tried putting it all in fairings, and then it occurred to me that I can't actually do anything until it's out of the fairing, so I can't go on EVAs or get anything like that, so I just gave up on the whole fairings idea.
See, wow. I need to find a mod that's like Kerbal Checklist, where like anytime you're about to go or anything, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to this place. Okay, that place has an atmosphere. Do you have parachutes? Do you have landing legs? Do you have this? It's like, do you plan on coming back?
They're actually putting that into stock,
Yeah, Didn't we hear that 1.0 has got? I don't think they're calling it a checklist, but I mean, doesn't it tell you, hey, you don't have landing legs, hey, you don't have parachutes?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So
okay. Well,
where's the comedy going to come from before you even leave the vehicle assembly bay?
I was going to say. Well, they need to. The next iteration of MechJeb needs to be where it actually builds the ship for you. You tell it what you want, and then it constructs like the perfect ship.
I just want to go here. Okay,
I can do that.
All right, fly it for me. All right, now take some pictures for me and tweet them out. You know what? I'm just going to leave the room. You just take care of it.
Do you know what anytime I think of MechJeb as having a voice, I always think of MechJeb as being like this big slobbery dog that just wants, okay. Yeah. Amy, did you have something to say?
Something else that's just happened to me for the first time ever today. So I thought I should say, I now know what happens when you run out of food, water, and oxygen with life support installed.
Oh.
Yeah, I didn't actually realise. It was on the way back from in Minmus, because I was doing this crazy Minmus contract that I had that gave me loads and loads of science, but I had to go to various points around Minmus and get a crew report under 5,000, then I had to get an EVA on the surface at a certain point. Mm-hmm. So I was going all over the place and spending ages doing it to get that, and I was quite pleased with myself because I got loads of science and funds. And on my way back, halfway back, most of the way back, I ran out of food and oxygen and water. And it was all 0 in red, and then it was counting down in the minus. So, how long it'd been without water and food and oxygen.
So
and I now know.
What happened?
I didn't know that. I was just desperate to get there, so I just, launched towards Kerbin and, plummeted into the ground at, dangerous G-forces. Half the ship exploded, but it was okay because I was out of it. But I got him down and got him out breathing, and then it kind of reset. But the thing is, I wondered why he didn't die, and what I found out is Kerbals can go a certain amount of time, and it actually tells you how long they can go. They can go 7,200 seconds without oxygen.
Really?
By default, apparently, with life support. It's changeable, but the default... Because I was wondering, it had been a good few minutes without oxygen. I was thinking, he's still alive here. This is strange.
Well, Kerbals are stupid and durable.
Yeah.
The
only thing that happens when you run out of air, it just kills brain cells. I mean, it's okay.
Well,
You should watch the stupidity meter just go up.
I was going to say, it's not like they start out with too many.
Yeah.
Wow. So are you, so when we interrupted you, you were just about to launch the monstrosity to Duna, is that correct?
Oh, yeah, as soon as I leave today, as soon as you guys go off, I'm going to launch the monstrosity.
Okay. Are you planning on trying to hit Ike while you're there?
I've got to crash into Duna first.
Well, Ike is really easy. As a matter of fact, Ike is one of those where if you're not careful, you'll actually float off of it. It's one of those.
Yeah, the gravity's so light.
Oh, yeah. Oh, don't jump. When you're standing on Ike, don't jump. Because
Minmus is horrible for that. I hate jumping on Minmus. I'd rather use my RCS.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, Minmus Minmus is a fun planet. I like the way it looks, But yeah, it's when you start fighting that low gravity. Oh my! But you can get on and off Minmus with almost no fuel at all. I mean, it takes almost nothing to get up into orbit.
Is Ike the same? It takes almost no fuel at all.
Oh yeah, as a matter of fact, Ike is one of those where it's kind of hard to stay on it type. I mean, it has even less gravity than Minmus does. It's been a while since I've been to Ike, but if I remember correctly, it's one of those where you can actually float off of it type of things. Mm-hmm. So that's how slender it is. Well, how far along are you in contracts? Or I meant to say career. Sorry.
Well, I've unlocked everything to, I think 500's the next stage. I've got the docking port junior.
Yeah.
And that's that level in the tech tree is as far as I can go without unlocking any more, but it's so expensive. I had to pay $510K just to unlock that bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you got to try to get, you have to have $510K to spend on that.
Yeah.
Not just to spend, so you have to have money left over to spend on things to use that stuff.
Well, I found a really interesting contract that actually set up my whole run in this career, which I still haven't done it, but I've had it pending, and it gave me $500K upfront funds.
Oh, wow.
I had to take the training academy into orbit and do a test on the training academy, and then I'd get 600 for completion. But if I fail it, it'll take off nearly 700K. So I've got to do that at some point.
Okay, educate me. Training Academy, what is that?
That's part of a mod, which is MKS, which is they're actually putting into stock in the next version. MKS is all about orbiting space stations and then planetary space stations. You have modules where you can grow things, you can get life support oxygen, you've got vegetation, then you can... I think they're also incorporating what's replacing carbonite and kethane. So
wow.
you can have a mining colony in essence on the planet. Well, I use it for the space stations mostly.
Well, they have the listeners have jokingly referred to if you play with Deadly Reentry and FAR, they call that the Kettlewell setting. What is the actual Kettlewell setting? You're on career. You've got Deadly Reentry. You've got FAR. What else? Because it sounds like you're running a bunch of stuff.
Kerbal Engineer Redux, Deadly Reentry and FAR, TAC Life Support, and MKS OKS with Carbonite.
See, no matter what I accomplish in this game, I always know that I'm about 10 steps behind Amy.
Yeah.
But you've been more places.
Yeah, but I've been more places.
Without the restrictions,
without the difficulty settings. You have imposed... you have made Kerbal about as difficult as it can get, I think.
That's why I enjoy stuff like that. Like, to me, going to Duna in Sandbox just wouldn't count for me. I wouldn't get as much enjoyment out of it as going there in Korea.
Amy's very competitive.
Yeah.
With myself.
Well, what was the, aren't you on a team?
A team?
A sports team?
Oh, a hockey. Yeah, I play hockey.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah. So do you get out there and, bash the other players?
Oh, my whole team knows that I'm I'm very, very competitive, but I'm more angry at myself, when I mess up, when I miss a shot or something.
Okay. So you're progressing through career. You're on your way to Duna. What's up after that?
If I can get to Duna, then my next goal is to get to... I wanted to go to Eve before, I went through all your trauma with you. So now I'm going to, bypass that, and I'm going to... This is very, very optimistic, but I want to go to Jewel. And me being me, I'm going... And it won't work at all, but my first instinct will try and build a one-shot that will get to Jewel.
Oh, my.
Oh.
It won't work, I'm sure, but I'm going to go as far as I can with one-shots before the game forces me to rendezvous.
The one-shot to Jewel and back, to me, that would be like the Monstrosity's evil, much bigger twin brother.
Oh, have you used the Thors? This is the first time I've ever got far enough in Korea to use the Thors. I love the Thors.
I'm not familiar with that.
Oh, they're solid rocket boosters from Kerbal Rocketry. I think Thor's the nickname for Globe 10, 2, or 12.
Oh, yes. Okay, I'm with you. Yeah, those things, those huge monsters.
Yeah, I don't know if you can see it. I sent you a picture just now of my monstrosity. It's just like covered in those Thor monster solid rocket boosters.
Did you tweet it?
No, I tweeted it, but I also sent it to you.
Okay, we'll have to look it up.
Yeah.
Well, very good. So are you, has your opinion of career in 0.90, is it still about where it was?
Yeah, but I don't really have any major problems with it that haven't, been addressed. And there's nothing that's game-breaking to me or that spoils my fun. So I'm fairly happy with it. I'm really excited about a lot of stuff. You see, every time I adopt a mod, it seems to become stock. I adopted MKS, it became stock. I adopted Deadly Reentry and Fire, and it became, versions of it are becoming stock. Yeah. So it's just making it better and better for me, because it's less mods I have to install.
Do you know what I think? I think, Amy, we need to have a segment every week. We'll call it Hardcore with Amy. And we'll get like hard heavy metal rock guitars, and it'd be like, wow, hardcore with Amy, and she'll come in and she'll go, okay, this week I'm playing the game in the dark.
Yeah.
Blindfold.
Like the most insane difficulty settings you can ever possibly imagine.
Playing it without a keyboard and mouse.
Yeah.
Or a gamepad.
And every segment would end with Amy going, top that, suckers.
Hardcore Kerbal with Amy K. If you're not playing extreme, you're weak.
Yeah.
I have to tell you, I forgot to tell you actually, I play with custom difficulty settings.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So every time I unlock the tech something on a tech tree, I don't get all those parts. I have to buy each part individually.
Really?
Yeah. I've got the respawning of Kerbals turned off. I start with hard level funds, like opening funds. I think I need to get checked into some sort of institution. I think there's something wrong with me.
Now, I just, honestly, I mean, I am just in awe. When I listen to how you play this game, I mean, I just, it's like bow down to Amy.
Yeah.
You do things on the... It took me a while to adapt Far and Deadly Reentry, and you had kind of taunted me into doing it.
It was just when you got to the Mun and you emailed me saying, well, that wasn't so hard.
Yeah.
Then you go back and blow up. I just felt such a sense of, I was trying to figure out why it was so easy for you.
Like,
and
welcome to my world.
So much better.
Yeah, you loved that, because, I mean, it was talk about famous last words. It's like, oh, this isn't that difficult. Oops. So... Well, remind me again, I know you've been to the Mun and Minmus in the past. You said this is your first time to Duna. Have you been to anything outside the Kerbin system before?
This is my first time outside the Kerbin system. And
okay.
I'm going to tweet my whole way to destruction.
Amy's going to have all kinds of fun. Well, you're going to have to, when you get there, you're going to have to send out some pictures and stuff.
Oh, I'll send out pictures all the way, and if I can get one, I'll get a picture of the exact moment that I explode.
Well, I wanted to ask, Squad has released the final artwork, it looks like, for Valentina Kerman. What did you think?
To be honest, I didn't see much difference. I don't know if I was just looking at it wrong, but...
Maybe it's because of the helmet.
It looks like they changed the head. It's like less cylindrical
slightly
and more
different shape.
oval, you know. But I'm glad they didn't really change much beyond that.
Yeah.
Like, because usually whenever they feminize certain things, it gets a little ridiculous.
Oh, can you imagine if they turned her into a character from like a comic book? You know, we're like she's like Seven of Kerbin.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. So if they could just make it something subtle like that, not like real astronauts have curves kind of stuff. You know, if they could keep it like that, I think they're fine.
Well, I think doesn't she have? If I remember right, it's been about a week since I saw the picture. Doesn't she have a ponytail?
I'm not sure.
I don't think I saw the back of her head.
Okay. Yeah. That may be why, the fact that because she's in her helmet.
Which really, I don't know if I've ever seen the backs of any of their heads, because they always have the helmets on.
No.
So.
They all go to Frankenstein's barber.
Yeah.
The only thing they don't have is these little bolts. The neck bolts. Yeah. So. Well, Amy, did you have anything else before we move on with progress?
No, I think that's it for me.
Okay. Well, do you wanna hang around and listen to my whopping progress?
Oh yes.
Okay. And you have to chime in. You have to taunt me. Okay. Yeah. There you go. Every time I say something, you have to go, you big old wuss. I've done better than that.
Yeah.
Some of them, my progress this week, I don't have as much as usual, simply because Homeworld came out.
Homeworld.
Oh. I will say this: amazing. It was an amazing game then. It is an amazing game now. They have scaled everything up, but it still looks like the same game, and it still plays like the same game. I played the first level, and it was like, I think the last time I played the game was at least 10 or more years ago, and it was like it's like I played it last week. It was so familiar.
Oh yeah.
They have updated the game so perfectly for next-gen systems. I played the first level, and then I went back to Kerbal. The one thing about story games is once you play a story level, that freedom is not there. And I still love, don't get me wrong, Homeworld is still hands down my favorite RTS.
Mm-hmm.
But the freedom in Kerbal, I've said this before. I have gone to the Mun many times. I've gone to Duna. I've gone to Jewel. I've gone to all kinds of places, but it's never the same thing twice.
Yeah.
Whereas with Homeworld, I love the game, but I knew, even 10 years later, I remembered every second of the playthrough.
Mm-hmm.
I remembered immediately when I started playing, I remembered I need to do this, this, and this because this is about to happen.
Yeah.
And that is not a knock. If you have never played Homeworld, I strongly recommend you play this game. It is awesome. But the fact that you don't have the freedom, the fact that it is a story game and there is a script that you're locked into, takes away some of the replay value.
Yeah, I kind of, and whenever you get some sort of reboot of a game you've played before,
mm-hmm.
like they made Black Mesa Source, which was Half-Life 1,
right?
Just with, improved graphics and some slight changes.
Mm-hmm.
There were parts that were slightly different whenever I was playing through it, but I had played Half-Life 1, like, every year I'll play through Half-Life 1.
Right.
I'll just do a playthrough from it because it's, like, my favorite game. So I'll play it, and whenever we will go through there, like, I'll go through it, I still remember how many bullets of each type it takes to take out whatever, and
right.
like what's going to come around the corner in every major event. So whenever I take those things on, it's like, well, I can tell that it's different, but it's still so far the same. So it's like, exactly how to go through the motions to do it.
I think, for me personally, it takes away some of the value of the game after you've completed it. I can't think off the top of my head of any game I've actually gone back to and replayed the story, except for a very, very few, small number of games, mostly RPGs and mostly Final Fantasies.
Mm-hmm.
Homeworld I've never played at all, so I am actually going to try that out, but I've got to wait for it to come to Mac first.
Well, as a Battlestar fan, you will love the game simply because it is very playable Battlestar Galactica, because It's not a direct copy, but the idea that you're taking the remnants of humanity and trying to find this mythical homeworld while this hostile alien force is dogging your every step.
Yeah.
It's very Battlestar.
Can I ask both you guys,
Yes.
when you're replaying a game through the single-player story mode in whatever game it is, what do you get out of replaying the story when you already know the story? I'm curious.
For me, if I ever replay through the story, it's so I can explore things that I didn't try. I mean, some more games now have the option to, like, different choices will open different paths. But let's say we're just going with a game that just doesn't have that at all. To mess with parts of the game that I didn't try, to try approaching things I've already done in a different way, as far as like certain battles or whenever I'll try it with different equipment or different strategies. And then story-wise, maybe something has changed with myself that will make me view the story in a different way when I've come back to it. I don't do it often, but whenever I do, it's usually the kind of game that has enough going on in it that I can have the same experience, but just with some minor changes.
To answer your question, it depends on how structured the story is. For example, I'll use a couple of first-person shooters. Medal of Honor Allied Assault begins with a landing at Normandy Beach level, and you get dumped into the exact same place every time, but where you go from there is you can vary your play style from that point on. And then there's a later Homeworld game where it actually begins with you parachuting, and where you land determines what happens next. Now, that kind of a game, I can replay those levels over and over and approach them differently and get a different experience. But, for example, like Half-Life 2, which is an amazing game. The thing is, though, when you start that game, you always have to walk down that hallway. You always have to follow the boards up and around to get into certain rooms. And, it's a very structured story game. So it's difficult for me to go back to something like Half-Life 2, where the story is so scripted, versus a level that is more, the scenario is the same, but how you approach it can be somewhat different. That gives me a little bit more replayability. If the story is so structured that there's not a whole lot of variation, then the replayability to me goes down dramatically, because it's like rereading the same chapter of a book over and over.
I have done replays of games where I've tried to do it thematically.
Mm-hmm.
So,
explain thematically.
Instead of taking advantage of the game's behaviors, I actually would play how the character may actually play.
Oh, okay.
So, BioShock 1, whenever one of the big daddies would come after you, well, if you kept ducking and, dodging in the right way and taking advantage of walls and corners, the AI would have a little bit of difficulty mapping around them as quickly as you could, because, you have the maneuverability of the player. Now, I've replayed certain games where I used only what would make the most sense story-wise, or like whatever I think the character would do, or would make the scene more dramatic. I've done that, and that sounds completely ridiculous, but it's been kind of fun. Where, like, they would, this would be the coolest gun to use, not the most efficient, but the coolest. Like, try to do it in the biggest, neatest way I could.
I've done that, where where all you need is like a sniper rifle, and instead you're using a rocket launcher because it's cooler.
Yeah.
You do absolutely ridiculous things. Well, I'm curious about one thing with BioShock, though. What do you do when a Big Daddy Love comes at you?
You just got to get in the mood.
You just got to get in the mood. You put on your silk jammies and you get out the champagne.
Yeah.
Say, "Oh, baby, come on over here and bring your little sister." Oh, that sounded so bad, didn't it?
Okay, so what's your progress in the game?
Yeah, really. So, anyway, well, I wanted to ask Amy a question since she asked us a question. What do you think? We're talking about replayability. Do you, as far as Kerbal goes, to me, I've never had a game this replayable. I thought Minecraft would be infinitely replayable. But as Nos has pointed out, you really do kind of settle into a pattern. No matter how many times you start that game, there are certain things you're going to do every time.
Yeah, in reference to unmodded. Like, if you don't do any mods or anything, usually the first couple days are survival and shelter, and once you have that, it's like, well, now I can do whatever I want, but any tasks I had, I've sort of achieved. Where with Kerbal, it's like, well, there's the task, but there's a lot of different ways I could do it. Like space planes or single builds or doing with Rendezvous.
A thing I've found as well, especially with Kerbal, is there isn't actually an end per se, because yes, there's only a limited number of things you can do, but that limit is so high that I don't think anybody's reached it. And certainly playing in career mode, to even get there, you have further obstacles. And me being me, every time I get a little bit further, I'll start a new career with a new mod that I've found that makes it a little bit more difficult. And so it always gives me that push, that urge. So instead of feeling like I have to grind through this to get to the next level, to get where I've not been before, it's okay, I need to do this, but to do this I'm going to have to be clever because I'm under this constraint and this constraint and this constraint. And even it's very hard to play Kerbal the same way twice. And I deliberately never save my ships. So I never use them between games. So every time I have to I don't think I've ever built two ships exactly the same. So I've always got to work out what I'm going to do and what I'm going to build. And to me, it's just never been laborious.
Okay, I have to say my admiration just went up another notch. You don't save your ships?
Oh no. Once I have built a ship, it's used, and then I have to. Well, I'll save it if I'm using it twice. The exact same ship, but between games or for different missions, every time I'm doing something different, going to a different planet, doing a different thing, I'll create a new ship. So I think I've got like 10 XPR ships, which is what I call my experimentals, in my current game, because they all get wiped every time I start career, and I start career again all the time. So, and I've got one ship for the Mun, one ship for Minmus, just because it only took me one to get there and back, and now I've got one for Dina.
Is the advantage that every time you rebuild a ship, quote unquote, it's always a better ship?
No, not by a very long way. More often than not, I forget what I did that works the first time, so then I have to build like 3 ships to get me to the mono, the min missile.
Wow. Okay. Well, see, because when I build ships, I've talked about this before. To me, the whole shipbuilding part is a whole process in the game that, because I don't know about you, but I rarely build a ship and have it leave the launch pad in its completed form. Inevitably, something isn't staged right, or something isn't put together correctly, or something is just not right. And generally when I get a working ship, it's about the 5th or 6th iteration of it, because I keep going back and making tweaks.
I do the same thing, but once I get it perfect, I don't save it.
Wow. Good Lord. The definition of Kettlewell mode continues to get just that much more difficult.
More unforgiving.
Yeah.
Oh, you did a good job? Well, I guess you need to do it over.
I think Amy's going to rule the world someday.
Yeah.
I always thought it was she who was not going to be named that was going to take over. Now I've discovered it's Amy.
We have someone on our side.
Amy, and she's going to be a force for good.
Yeah.
I try.
Difficult, but good.
Yeah, unforgiving, but good.
Yeah.
Okay,
Amy's going to make it hard for us.
So what's your Kerbal progress?
Okay, my Kerbal progress. Like I said, I played some Homeworld. Strongly recommend it, folks. Get this game. It's very good. Okay, Kerbal progress. I decided that the best way to deal with the abusive relationship that I'm in with Eve, I'm just ignoring her.
There you go.
You got
to do it. Hey, you got to do what's right for you, brother.
She keeps giving me these drunk, phone calls and text messages and things, and I'm going, you know what, Eve? I'm ignoring you.
Don't engage in that.
I'm sorry, but I don't even see you.
Take the high road.
You're not good for me, Eve.
You're worth that.
You're worth doggone it. I'm good enough.
Yeah.
I'm smart enough, and Eve,
Yeah.
I'm not going to complete that sentence.
It's
because
over.
I'd have to bleep it.
for right now.
It's over. I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm moving on.
Yeah.
I found a much better planet, Eve.
And who's that?
Jewel.
Ooh.
Yeah, I will say Jewel. Honestly, the Jewel system is my favorite in the game because there's so much to do there.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of planets around there.
Do you remember this goes ways back? Yeah, there's a lot of planets there. Very funny. You so funny. Before I got locked into messing around with Eve and everything, I was trying. You remember I was working my way through all the moons in the Jewel system. Mm-hmm. Do you remember I got hung up on Tylo? That was the last place I was at, and I think I'm trying to remember. Did the 0.90 come out, and that's why I stopped, or did I just get sidetracked onto something else?
Carry over.
Something like that.
It was. I think it was Kerbal Engineer.
Yeah,
I don't quite remember. So it's like, oh yeah, we can't update that.
Yeah,
so you lost.
I lost everybody, but I think it was when they upgraded to 0.90. I had been working my way. I started with the furthest out moon, and then I went into Lathe, which is the closest end, and then I was working my way back out. Uh-huh. And I had gotten to Tylo. Well, I decided that I was going to pick up where I left off, which is funny because right in time for 1.0. So wouldn't it be funny if I end up stranded around Tylo again? Amy, did you have a comment?
I just have to say, have you read the dev note that they might be adding a new system in 1.0?
I saw something like that. Everything is pretty much an analog for what we have in our solar system. What would this be?
There were, I don't know the specifics, but there were a lot of comments from the person who used to design the systems for Kerbal in an old forum post. He ran through all the original spec for what they planned. They planned another gas giant. Elu was going to be a moon. I can't remember if it was around Jewel or the second gas giant. Okay. And I don't know what they're actually adding, but it just made me think with all these that they could be adding for 1.0. Your boast of having been to every planet and moon will be out of date.
Yeah, it would be. You know, that actually reminds me. This is something I've been meaning to say for months now, but I always forget. But there is one planet that there is not an analog for in the game, and I would love it if they would add a ringed gas giant.
That's it.
Yeah,
I would love it if they would add a Saturn.
They said they were going to add a ring planet.
That'd be so cool. I wonder. I'm curious how specific the rings are going to be because if you could get like right on top of Saturn's rings, it's rocks, it's dust and rocks and dirt and debris.
Yeah.
I wonder if the game engine is sophisticated enough to render it as anything other than a flat disk. I don't know. We'll find out.
I'd be interested in seeing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am this last time when I went to Jewel, one of the I won't call it a gripe, but one of the things that I have noticed is sometimes the draw distance can be a little wonky. As I'm approaching Jewel, when I get to a distance where I think I should be able to see it, a lot of times I can't. And I'm assuming it's because the game isn't creating it yet. Mm-hmm. This time, and I don't have any numbers to support my distance from Jewel, but this time, as I was approaching Jewel, before I even got into my Jewel encounter, I actually saw it as I was approaching. It was just a little green dot way, way off in the distance, but I actually saw it, and I remember thinking to myself, good job. It was realistic that I should be able to see it at this distance, and boom, there it was. But
I'd love to go to Jewel.
Yeah, Jewel is once you figure out Jewel, it is a really fun system. The trick is Jewel, because of its size and because of its atmosphere, you can use a lot of fuel saving techniques with Jewel. When you enter that system, do not go for the moon that you're trying to get to. Establish a low periapsis. The atmosphere on Jewel is about, let me see if I remember this correctly. I think it's 200 kilometers. If you set your periapsis at about 100 kilometers, when you come in, you'll have spectacular flame effects and whatever, but it slows you down. It aerobrakes you enough to where you end up with a very elliptical orbit. And when you close that orbit and you leave Joule's atmosphere, when you get to your apoapsis, expand out your periapsis to where it's above Joule's atmosphere, and then when you come swinging around again and hit the periapsis, use that, the Oberth effect, use that to get a speed boost and elongate your elliptical orbit even more to where it touches the orbit of the planet that you want. And then you can make a few little tiny adjustments and end up encountering that planet. And you can do all of this with very little fuel expenditure. Once you figure that trick, Joule becomes a very economical system once you get to it. So anyway, that's just my thing. I've also learned from past experience, if you get too close to Joule, that's when you get sucked into the black hole. As I've said before, there is the game, once you get below a certain altitude, the game just renders it as completely black. And pretty soon you just explode.
Yeah, you just fall through it.
Yeah, so...
They actually have, I don't remember where I saw it, but there actually is text in the game for getting a surface report from Joule, even though it hasn't a surface.
Is it really?
Yeah, it says something. You can look it up. It is real. It says something like, "I'm not sure how I got to the surface of a gas giant, but it sure is swell," or something like that.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, you have a look. It exists.
Really? But I wonder, can you... I'm assuming you can't get back from that, though, right?
You probably can't even get to it. I've no idea if it's actually
I think they
possible
just
to get
made
there.
the text, but I don't know. Maybe they're seeing if someone can do it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Boy,
Might be an Easter egg.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to talk about... I mean, because once you get captured, I mean, you can do a full burn and still not get out. Because the gravity on that thing is so massive.
It's like quicksand.
But yeah, I've the trick I use with Joule is about 100 kilometers is where you want to put your periapsis, and that seems to, for my ships, that seems to give me an elliptical orbit. But anyway, long story short, I sent that giant fuel thing that North Star was having a heart attack about.
Yeah,
I sent that to the Joule system. And I did, I got the elliptical orbit going around Joule, and then I put it in orbit around Tylo. And by the time I got there, I ended up with, there's a lot of fuel. I've got a lot of fuel in orbit around Tylo. And then I sent a much smaller lander. And this I literally went right off the ground on Kerbin and then straight to Joule. And I used the same thing. Came in, did a low periapsis over Joule, created an elliptical orbit, intercepted Tylo, and came into orbit. I am exactly where I was before, which is I don't understand why this is happening, but for some reason, I do not have enough delta V to slow myself down enough to land on Tylo. I think you're going around it at like 2,000. If I remember right, I think I'm going around it at like 2,010 meters per second. And I mean, I have burned all of my lower stages, and I have burned almost all of the fuel in my lander just to get slow enough to come in for a landing. And then, of course, I build up so much speed, I hit the ground and explode.
Yeah.
So what I'm having to do is I'm rendezvousing with the fuel ship that I have in orbit, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to send another ship there, rendezvous with that, and I'm going to use all of its engines and fuel and all of that to slow myself down enough for landing. Tylo does not have much gravity, and it doesn't have an atmosphere, so I don't understand why I'm having this much trouble slowing down, but I am. So anyway, but that's largely my progress. I've gone back to Tylo,
rekindling an old flame.
Yeah, Tylo. I've left Eve for a much younger moon.
Yeah,
but Tylo. It sounds like like one of those California, like California secretary boutique names or something.
Oh, see, I keep thinking of Tyco.
Tyco?
Like,
yeah.
The toy company. Like Tycho RC.
Or Tycho, the crater on the moon.
Oh, yeah.
The Tycho
Well,
crater.
yeah, maybe, whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
It's just like in
Or
2000. Just in 2001, man.
Yeah.
Tylo Swift.
Oh! End it! End it all!
She said it!
Shut down progress. Progress is over.
No! Why did you say that?
I couldn't resist.
Let's move on to the letters. Let's get out of here.
You know what? At least the one comfort I have learned today that she who must not be named will not take over the world.
Yeah.
Amy will.
Yeah.
And she will be benevolent.
We have a force to combat the darkness.
Just more difficult. It'll be like, Amy, I'm going to go to the store. The store is like 1 block over, so I'm going to drive in a straight line to get there. And Amy will say, no. You have to go in the opposite direction. Okay? You have to have 3 flat tires. And you only get a pint of gasoline.
Yeah. And if you make it...
And you have to go at night.
And you can't take any money.
With no headlights.
You can't take any money to buy
right.
anything.
And you can't take any money. Yeah, that'll be the Kettlewell dynasty.
See, for you guys, that's a challenge that it's issued and must be carried out. For me, that's probably the summary of all of my poor planning.
Well, Amy does it on purpose. I mean, Amy on purpose thinks of ways to make this game more difficult. That's why I bow down to Amy.
Yeah.
I'm not deliberate. I don't sit down and think, how can I make it more difficult? And I'll just see something and think, oh, that'll be fun.
Yeah. I bet I could try that.
Kind of at it. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, compare it to me. It's like I sit down and look at something. When I generally add a mod, it's because it helps. It's like I'll see something like Kerbal Engineer and I'll go, ooh, that helps. Amy looks at things and goes, ooh, that'll make it harder.
Yeah.
What I really want to try is real solar system. I just don't think my laptop can handle it.
To me, and understand now, this is someone who has no experience with it. Okay, I'm giving my impression of what I think it would be, and this is not a dig on real solar system, but the parameters of that mod to me takes a lot of the fun out of the game. The fact that you're dealing with those enormous distances.
Yeah.
See, it could do, because there is a limit. Even for me, there's a limit. Because everything I add to my game, to me, it makes it more fun. But Real Solar System could either make it more fun, or it could make it a lot more tedious.
Yeah.
So.
Well, because I'm at the point now to where just trying. I'm at the point right now where when I send a ship from Kerbin to the Joule system, I hit my time acceleration as fast as I can, and I still sit there and think, oh my God, this is taking forever.
Yeah.
Now imagine doing that with Real Solar System.
No thanks. No thanks.
Very good. Well, okay, so we are done with our progress. Amy, you are going to go play some Kerbal, and we are going to read some letters, and then you're going to come back, and we're going to do after the credits and do our tribute to Leonard Nimoy.
Sounds good. I'll launch my monstrosity.
Well, listen, good luck on Duna, and we'll go ahead and do the letters, and we'll see you in just a bit.
Bye.
And now your letters and the latest news in the mission briefing.
And that means it's time for your letters, tweets, and the latest Kerbal news, and we're going to start off with an audio letter from Andy M.
Hi, Biff and Nos. I had this idea for career mode. Rather than having contracts for heights, getting into orbit, getting to the moon, these could be achievements instead. Therefore, players wouldn't miss out on rewards if they got to space on their first attempt. I also thought these achievements could be used for a competitive multiplayer. You could compete to be the first to complete the achievements. In my career game, I've been doing lots of survey contracts to pay for the upgrades to my space centre. So far, I've got everything to level 2 except for the research centre, the spaceplane hangar, the runway, and the VAB. Now, this might sound slightly odd, as I've been doing a lot of work with planes, and therefore only having access to a very dodgy runway and the basic plane hangar, but it does mean that I have to be rather economical with my building. I really wanted to upgrade the research centre so I could spend my science points and get myself some better plane parts. So I got to within roughly 10,000 credits, and I took out one more survey contract, thinking that should give me plenty of money to buy the research centre. So I went off to build a plane, and I noticed, actually I've got enough to actually upgrade the research centre now, and I can build a better plane, having unlocked some more parts. So then I went and bought the upgrade centre, unlocked some more sciences, went back, spent quite a while designing a new plane with all the new parts, went to launch, and then it said, no, you don't have enough money to launch. Fortunately, I could take out some more contracts, so therefore I was able to take up more contracts out that gave me some money to launch a plane and go forth and complete my survey contract. When having completed that, it managed to bring me 100,000 credits into the bank. This is mainly due to the fact that 60% of my reputation has currently been converted to credits. My next challenge is going to be getting a plane into space and then watching it burn up on re-entry. Live long and prosper. Andy M.
That is such a good letter. Oh, I love that. That's Andy M. Thank you for sending in an audio letter, and I encourage everybody to send in audio letters or text letters. Just contact us because we certainly love to hear from you.
Yeah, on his achievements thing, the advantage of implementing something like that is there have been times where you've gone to do a contract and then you completed something. Or while doing that contract, you've completed something else and go back and there was a contract for it and you've already done it.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't want to have to do the same thing again. And if it's some sort of achievement, then, you would, whenever you did it, you would get the amount.
Yeah.
So if you happen to do anything while you're out there, then you would achieve that obstacle.
Well, that's what he described as kind of the Kerbal experience in a nutshell, which is, you find yourself at these crossroads where it's, okay, do I invest the money, for a better ship, or do I upgrade this? And then, and then you find yourself, well, now I don't have enough to launch. And then I love the closing line that he had, which to me is the Kerbal attitude, in a nutshell, which is, boy, I can't wait to launch a space plane and have it burn up on re-entry.
Yeah.
That's the Kerbal player. Mm-hmm. That pessimistic optimism.
Yeah. You take a beating and keep on going.
Yeah. We take a beating and keep on playing. Well, let's go ahead and move on to our letters now. The very first letter comes to us from Death Saber. Do you remember that I had been talking about, since I installed Deadly Reentry, I went through some time learning how to re-enter without losing my ships, and I told you that coming in at a shallow angle seems to work better.
Yeah.
And I had theorized it was because you're pointing your heat shield exactly in the direction of your trajectory. Mm-hmm. Well, Death Saber writes in and says, "Hi, Biff. The reason Deadly Reentry prefers you to come in at a shallow angle is as follows. You spend more time at the higher altitude where the air is thinner. Because the air is thinner, you experience less heat for the same velocity. Because you're spending more time up there, you bleed off more velocity before dropping into the thicker atmosphere. How shallow you need to enter is determined by how fast you're entering, i.e., if you entered from low orbit, you can probably get away with a pretty low 10 to 20 kilometer periapsis, whereas entering pretty much directly from your Duna return, you're going to need to put as much put your periapsis as high as possible, probably 50K, although at that shallow a re-entry, you're not going to get captured by Kerbin without a retrograde burn. These will also be affected by the mass of your ship. The heavier your ship is, the more momentum it's going to carry into the atmosphere. Therefore, the more drag is required to slow the craft down. Therefore, the shallower your entry needs to be. Homer to your mobile, Death Saber." Okay, so that makes a lot more sense. You spend more time in the upper atmosphere.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had noticed that the shallower angle worked better. Now I know why. Well, what's our next item?
From Polygon.com.
This is a news story.
Anyone who's played Kerbal Space Program can tell you that just getting into orbit is an achievement. Building a cool, and also functioning, star vehicle in the physics-based spaceflight simulator is another giant leap. Now players who wish to memorialize their success can do so with 3D printed models of their creations. The printing company is Euclid, EUCL 3D. It's edgy.
Oh, wow.
Which set up this portal where Kerbal players can upload .craft files and make their order. There are a lot of parameters, caveats, and whatnot, particularly small parts like struts, launch clamps, or long beams that support heavy parts on a launch vehicle. Furthermore, a small ship model is $99. Where Euclid takes care of the scaling, they're going to end up at a roughly the same size along their longest axis. This means a fleet of vehicles won't be scaled to one another. So, what I'm waiting for is eventually they'll hit the point to where you can enter model rocket engines into them.
Yeah.
And you could actually launch these things.
Yeah.
And, as most model rocket engine experiences I've had, watch them explode.
Well, I was going to say, if you want to just recreate the real experience, have them do a 3D print of your ship.
Yeah.
Load it up with firecrackers and blow it up, because that's about the same.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the real world Kerbal experience.
Which, it's got to be funny at going full circle with, it started off as little model rockets with little foil people on them called Kerbals.
Right.
And it ends with 3D printed models of a video game, that have Kerbals in them,
Yeah. Well, things have a way of coming around. This is kind of an aside, but what I got to thinking about the other day, I don't wear a wristwatch anymore. People used to, back when people started carrying watches around, how did they carry them? Pocket watches, remember?
Yeah.
And then wristwatches came along, and that was a big deal. And then the analog watch was replaced with the digital watch. Well, now that I carry a phone, which has the time on it, I don't wear a wristwatch anymore. Okay, now I'm back to carrying a pocket watch.
Yeah.
Now they're talking about making wrist phones, which means, again, we're going full circle.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing here.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say, you mentioned the company name and you had to spell it out. A lot of the modern spellings, the very creative spellings, they look great, but then when you actually sit down and read them.
Yeah, it's like reading them is fine, but saying them out loud, it's like, oh, it's Euclid, but you have to spell it this way.
Yeah. It's like, well, that's not as cool.
Yeah. It's like, oh, Kerbals. It's like, oh, it's, it's K as in the band Korn, E as in Euclid, but spelled with a 3, R
You
as
would go with the band Korn. You funny. How about K as in Kerbal?
Yeah. Yeah.
K as in Kerbal.
Spell Kerbal, K as in Kerbal.
There you go.
E as in the E in Kerbal, R as in the R in Kerbal.
Can you imagine if Kerbal was spelled with a C?
Cerbal?
Cerbal space program?
Yeah.
Cerebral space program. You control it with your mind. Let's see. Our next letter. This comes from Wesley C., and it's called Eve and Hitchhiker Cans. You remember someone had commented that my Eve lander was probably too big.
Yeah.
And they had mentioned the fact that I have a hitchhiker container on the underside of it. And I was saying I was just using it to transfer the Kerbal from the capsule to the hitchhiker container and then get out on the ladder and actually get on the planet's surface. Wesley C. writes in and says, Biff, guess how much more a hitchhiker container weighs with Kerbals in it? 0. That's right. Your empty hitchhiker is just as bad as a full one. I suggest one of two changes to your ship. Either put the hitchhiker under a decoupler and leave it on the surface, or use a lander can instead. They have similar ground clearance. Good luck. Eve is a harsh mistress indeed. I'm just ignoring her.
Yeah.
I'm not. I have decided that this relationship is too abusive, and I'm not going to pay any attention to her whatsoever. Do you have a letter?
Yeah, this one is from Haywood Floyd, which, by the way, I think is one of the guys who...
Yeah, 2001.
Yeah,
Woo!
And also gave to our Patreon account. So, so thank you for pledging.
He's also the one that helped me last week. Do you remember when I was trying to find Russian women?
Oh, yeah.
He was the one that was helping me come up with sound bites and titles. And
he says, hello, Walter Napoleon. Biff urged me to write in when we chatted last week, so here I am. After episode 39, I finally watched Europa Report. Not a bad movie, but what bugs me mostly is the acting. They were supposed to play the best astronauts on Earth, but their performance was far from convincing. Now, you could say that it was because of their increased detachment from Earth, but honestly, I don't buy it. To me, they seemed only mildly interested in what they were doing. The commander did not act as a commander, and Pilot Roses seemed to be rather bored. On the other hand, Biff is right when he says in episode 10 that he found the found footage style to be really well integrated into the story, which you don't find in many such movies. Also, the thorough use of actual NASA imagery is quite persuasive. So thanks for pointing to the movie. Next time I'll watch the Val Kilmer movie.
Red Planet.
Yeah, if you want.
Yeah.
It's
Nos
okay.
wasn't that thrilled.
It's okay. I didn't kerbal around very much lately. After I'd successfully rendezvoused and docked, I'm thinking about what to do next. I have been to Mun and Minimus, and although there is still a lot of science to be respected, I was thinking about building a space station or a running Duna mission instead. Or maybe a mission to Moho. What would you suggest? Of course, the Eve is tempting as well, but I think the only reasonable way is by doing some calculations first to assess how a trip could be done at all. So long for now, and keep up with the great Kerbal casting. Haywood Floyd.
I say go to Moho because it is a frothy chocolate drink.
Yeah. So enjoy your Moho.
So enjoy your Moho. But make sure you serve it chilled.
Yeah.
Moho is best when it's chilled. Next letter. This comes from Brian Unabled. Hey, guys. I have been a listener since the very beginning and thought it was past time I write in to say thanks. Well, thank you. Kerbalcast has helped me through more house projects and drives to and from work than I can even begin to count. Thank you for what has become one of my favorite podcasts. No, really, I'm not even joking. Don't let this go to your head too much, but I listen to a lot of podcasts, and when a new Kerbalcast episode comes out, whatever I'm listening to is then put on a back burner. Crazy, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah. That's enough praise for one email. See, didn't go to our heads at all.
Yeah, see, there we go.
I wanted to chime in on my experience with KSP and Squad's push to 1.0. At first, I was pretty opposed to this move, but with every week's dev notes, that opinion has changed. It seems like Squad is really taking their time with this and hitting just about everything that needs attention. It still seems like they are biting off more than they can chew with the amount of stuff they're taking on, but I have more confidence that Squad can pull it off. Like most, I don't want to see KSP fall down that trap of being released too early, like a lot of early access titles. I don't want people to pass up the wonderful experience KSP can give. Have you noticed that the opinion about the 1.0 release is changing in the letters?
Yeah.
Do you know what I think it is? I think that because North Star was the one who brought it up originally, several episodes back, had said, I really don't think they're ready to do this. And a lot of people immediately chimed in and said, yes, we agree. But I think the difference is time. I think at that time, and I was one of them, I was firmly in this camp. I was under the impression that 1.0 was coming out very quickly. And every week that goes by and it doesn't come out, I get the sense that this is something that, that they're really taking their time with.
It's not as close as we thought it was going to be.
And I think that's why the tone of the letters are changing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because if it would have been happening that week, everyone would have still been in agreement. Yeah, but a few weeks out, it's like, well, maybe it's farther off than we thought.
Yeah.
It just sounded like they were going to do it soon.
Yeah, because I've said this repeatedly. I think I've said this in every episode since then. Every week we come in here and do this, and every week I'm amazed that we're not talking about 1.0.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be coming out quite, a ways back, and it hasn't.
Yeah.
So I think that's why the tone of the letters are changing. Back to the letter from Brian Unabled. For me, I started off KSP a lot like Biff. I was into playing Minecraft when I heard about KSP, and after seeing what you could do in it, I was hooked. I've been playing since before docking was even implemented, with well over 300 hours logged. Wow. Yet I haven't even sent a mission out to Jewel, at least not yet. I'm kind of waiting for 1.0 before I really start exploring everything. On that note, I am currently a sandbox player and am waiting for 1.0 to try career mode. KSP has rekindled my love of all things space and science related. I wish everyone could experience the sheer scope and the perspective of our place in the universe that can be obtained through playing this game. I wish this so much so that I've tried to get my cousins into the game. My youngest cousin checks all the boxes for someone that really should like KSP. Plays Minecraft, plays lots of sandbox-type games involving building, and he even plays Space Engineers. I don't even play that. My two other cousins have similar interests to mine, and they have barely accumulated 10 hours combined. This is deeply troubling. I know KSP will not be for everyone, but these people should like it, and yet they cannot seem to get into it. I don't want to conclude on a downer, but that's 3 people I know very well who can't seem to get into the game. That tells me it's not quite ready for prime time. Possibly, or maybe it's just those people. That was my comment, by the way. Thanks again for the show, and I'll wrap this up by quoting Star Talk Radio. I bid you to keep looking up. Brian Unabled. If I haven't said this recently, that is another podcast that I strongly recommend.
Yeah.
Star Talk. Neil deGrasse Tyson is one of the coolest men walking the planet as we speak.
Mm-hmm.
That man is so cool, and I just love to listen to him.
Yeah.
And, you know, to get a weekly dose of Neil deGrasse Tyson is just so cool. Thank you for the letter, Brian Unabled. What do we have next?
Actually, I'm going to talk on his letter for just a second.
Oh, okay.
The cousins that you have, they're just not quite into it yet. Was it cousins or nephews?
Oh, you would ask me that.
Yeah. You just read it.
Yeah, but I have no... I'm like...
But I just stopped listening to it, so you got to just fill me in here.
Youngest cousin.
Cousins.
Yeah.
Okay, I was right. So
honestly, I'm like the guy in Memento.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like no short-term memory at all.
You'll drink coffee somebody spit in.
Yeah, that's right.
So...
hey, but I get a cool suit out of it and a sports car.
Yeah, it's neat tattoos. So the cousins... Now, you mentioned that some of them were playing other games, but they just haven't gotten into Kerbal yet. It's like, just wait for them to exhaust their experience in those games, and they'll move on to Kerbal. And if they just haven't shown too much interest in it, they don't have to. You know, I mean, you like it, and you play it, and that's good. Because I'll hear people all the time, you know, like talking about board game stuff, like, oh, how do I get my girlfriend into this? Or how do I get, you know, my friends into this? Like, well, if they want to, they will. If they won't, then the only thing you're going to have is some people that lie to you on how much they're enjoying it. You know, they're like, oh, yeah, that's real fun, yeah. Or anytime you try to arrange to ask them how it's going or get something going with them, they'll dodge it. So
it may be an age thing, too.
Oh, yeah.
One thing Kerbal requires in abundance is patience.
Mm-hmm.
My girlfriend has said on many occasions, watching me play, she said, you know, I can tell it requires a lot of patience to play this game.
Yeah.
Because things don't generally happen real fast.
No.
You know, generally you do something now that will have an effect, you know, a minute from now or 10 minutes from now. And so it may be an age thing, you know, that immediate gratification.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, when you're younger, delayed gratification is not something that that's something you acquire as you get older.
Yeah, and I mean, you think about some of the Minecraft, you get it right then.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Like, or if there's something you're looking for, you have things to do right then to get that thing.
Yeah.
Instead of setting it up, waiting some time, and hoping it works out,
Mm-hmm.
it's like you're constantly working toward it. So
what I think is interesting about that is I was playing Minecraft when I discovered Kerbal. Kerbal, as I had said, Kerbal was there was a Steam sale. And it was like the last day of the sale, and I looked at it and I said, that looks like something I'd be interested in. So I went ahead and bought it. But I was so into Minecraft that, you know, it was like, I don't really have time for anything but this.
yeah.
And I was playing Minecraft like crazy, and I finally, you know, I thought, well, I'm gonna reserve a little time, and I'm gonna try this other game. And I played it. It was almost like my Homeworld experience this week, which was like, you know, I won't, you know, Kerbal doesn't have levels, quote unquote, but I basically played the first level of Kerbal. You know, I built something and got it off the launch pad, and, you know, got up into space and everything. And I kind of had this, well, this is going to take more effort than I'm really
wanting to do right
now. And, you know, that little Minecraft itch is just, I got to scratch that itch. Oh, I got to scratch that itch. So I exited out of Kerbal and I went back to Minecraft.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I played Minecraft intensively for like another week or another 2 weeks or something like that. And then I went back to Kerbal, and that was kind of the end of that. I mean, once I got into Kerbal, it was like, now I can't, it's like now all of a sudden I don't want to play other games.
Yeah.
Kerbal is terrible for the game economy. You know, for the other game economy, you know.
Yeah, so I would just give them time.
Yeah.
They have to play out the things they're currently playing, because I've had plenty of times where somebody's like, oh, you got to play this game. I'm like, yeah, and then I'll play it, and I'm like, well, no, I really want to go back to the thing I was currently doing.
Right.
So, Yeah, it won't happen right away. They may not catch it as quickly as you did or you would want them to. But if they are already interested in things like that, they will.
There are some games that come out that I think that I'm really going to get into and then don't for some really odd reason. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy Space Engineers, but it has just never eaten me up.
Yeah.
There's another game that came out on Steam, which is very similar to Minecraft, called Blockland. And I thought, oh man, I'm going to love this. And I just, it just, something about it just wasn't there.
Yeah. No,
I don't know. That's so weird. Well, let's see. You've got the next letter.
Yeah, this one comes from Scott. I enjoyed your discussion of Kerbal-related board games in this week's episode, and I had a suggestion for a game. The closest thing to Kerbal I've seen in a board game is Sierra Madre's High Frontier. It's a hard science game about near-future space exploration. The tech is a little beyond the chemical rockets in KSP, but nothing impossible with current tech. And the idea of exploring the solar system is the same. The trick is that the map isn't a physical map of space, but a map of the delta V between various orbits. From that you can read how many burns you have to get from, say, Earth to Mars orbit. Unfortunately, it's out of print now, and copies are stupid expensive, but a third edition is being worked on. And we'll have a link for that. And keep up the great podcast from Scott. Yeah, now, whenever I said that there aren't many games about rocketry, there are some games about rocketry. There aren't many that are in print. Usually whenever I tell people about games that are around, unless I think they'll just avidly eat that one up, I won't mention out of print. Because, like, for instance, there's a game that's getting a reprint, but currently it's out. It's called Fire and Axe, a Viking saga. That game, I think, retailed for like $60. It's around $400 right now.
Really?
Yeah, because it is out of print and hard to get. Now, once it gets back into print, it'll be $60 again. It's just the demand goes up so high, And I've had games I've owned that have been like that. Like I bought it for $80 and I sold it for like $160. I would not recommend anyone try to play the board game stock market because you're going to lose.
Yeah,
but
well, it's like back in the 90s when everybody started buying collector's editions of comics.
Yeah. So they're
when everybody buys them.
Yeah, they don't have that value, and I think there's gonna be an influx of that in board games. It's just like things that have print runs are gonna have very large print runs and not have that value.
Have you heard of the game that he was talking about?
No, I haven't. I have looked at space games, and there are a lot of games from the 80s and 90s that are out of print, but they were mainly paper kind of things. They're not high production values, and I'm not sure how well they were implemented. Current games that are in print, or at least easy to find a copy, Destination Neptune, we've talked about on here one time. Still haven't gotten plays after the initial time that I played it. So I can't really give it a strong recommendation. 1969, which is about the space where you're not even trying to land on the moon. You're just trying to do an orbit around it.
Right.
And it's very interesting, but it doesn't have a lot of replay value. But something that's very interesting is on Twitter, before I came over here, I follow a lot of board game people. And her name is Suzanne, and she was playing a lot of prototypes and putting pictures up. And I think I have the name right. I kind of did it from memory. Is Laboratory Games. They have a game called that they're currently in prototype on. So it's just pieces of paper with art on them that she was playing the game with, and it's called Don't Explode. And okay, so
which I think was the working title for Kerbal.
Yeah. So on the card, it has parts, and it has attachment points on the top, bottom, left, and right of each card. So you lay them down and it's like you attach the pieces to each other, kind of like a puzzle, except the pieces aren't made to connect to certain pieces. You connect them however you want.
Right. And
so there were fuel tanks and decouplers and girders and stuff to build your spaceship. And I don't know the full extent of it, but I'm guessing you launch them, and I'm not sure, things probably explode and fall apart. If anyone has played the game, there's also an app for it now called Galaxy Trucker. You're a trucker hauling stuff across the galaxy. I saw the look on your face.
It's just you had me going in one direction, and then the minute you said Galaxy Trucker, it was like somebody made Smokey and the Bandit as an app.
Somewhat.
Yeah.
You get all these pieces, and you try to attach them to each other to build a spaceship, and then hope it survives space.
Right.
Well, with this, I don't know the extent of it. I just
Now,
saw
are the pieces full of Coors beer?
Yeah, just from the pictures of the cards, they had like 3 different resource values, and I mean, they could have been Delta V, it could have been fuel, I'm not sure.
Okay.
And then you had a captain, and like, you know, the captain gave different abilities, and so I'm not sure the extent of the game, but I'm going to keep an eye on it just to see what comes out.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so thank you, Scott, for that letter.
Okay. Let's see. What do we have next? I've got the next letter. Oh, it's from North Star. Dear Kerbalcast team. And that's appropriate.
Yeah.
Because Amy
Especially
was with us today. Yeah. And she'll be coming back. First of all, Biff, I don't think you're an idiot. It took me a long time and a lot of effort to learn as much as I did about orbital mechanics, etc. Also, you're welcome to watch me on Steam anytime, as is Nos. I hope you don't mind reverts. As for today's A Kerbal Life, great job to Amy K for this segment as always. He's talking about the previous episode. Mm-hmm. Are you guys at Kerbalcast aware of the various Easter eggs hidden on the Mun? If not, the next episode of A Kerbal Life is going to spoil one for both of you. I'll be curious what that is.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I asked Amy about that, and she goes, I don't know. Regarding Nos's problems with thermometers in orbit, is he aware of the distinction between high orbit and low orbit in KSP? Are you?
Yes.
Are you aware?
I'm not sure. I didn't know it had anything to do with the thermometers, but
apparently it does. He says, based on your orbital altitude, your orbit is classified as either high or low around any celestial body, and thermometers only work in low orbit around any given body. Well, that answers that question, because you remember we were talking about people have recommended in career mode
making probes that would fly around
science
and just do
probes,
thermometer checks. And,
and
I was like, I can't get mine to do that. I guess I was too high up.
Yeah, the trick is put them in low orbit. Regarding the question about parachutes posed by one of your other listeners, parachutes are indeed tweakable. Oh, okay. You know, I had forgotten to look into this, too. I'm glad he talked about it. Parachutes are indeed tweakable as to the altitude and atmospheric pressure they deploy at. In the same way, via right-click context menu as Inyan. You know her big song, Orinoco Flow? Inyan. Let me try this again. In the same way, via right-click context menu as engine thrust can be limited, and fuel tanks can be launched only partially full or completely empty. The minimum pressure section on parachutes indicates the minimum ambient atmospheric pressure, where 0.2 represents 20% of Kerbal sea level pressure, for instance, that the craft must descend to before the parachutes will fully deploy, even partially or in drogue mode. On the other hand, deployment altitude is the altitude at which your parachutes will fully deploy, and can be set from anywhere from 50 to 5,000 meters above the ground. Minimum pressure can be set low enough to allow parachutes to partially deploy even higher. Whereas minimum pressure is a relative term. For instance, sea level pressure is only 0.2 on Duna. So if you set minimum pressure higher than that, your parachutes won't partially deploy before you smash into the ground. Deployment altitude is an absolute term relative to your altitude above the ground rather than above sea level, which is important to remember for high altitude landings. When playing with far and deadly re-entry, I would recommend keeping your parachutes from deploying until relatively low in the atmosphere, high pressure and low altitude. Despite what one of your listeners said, deadly re-entry does not cause your parachutes to randomly be eaten by the Kraken. Good to know. Yeah. Rather, if you deploy them too high in the atmosphere, which is usually accompanied by a warning telling you it's unsafe to deploy parachutes, that's one thing I'm having to get used to with deadly re-entry. Mm-hmm. Even when you're going up, even when you're launching, it'll tell you unsafe to deploy parachutes.
Yeah.
You know, and you're just kind of like, well, okay.
Didn't plan on it.
I wasn't going to,
but thank you.
Thanks for the info. Or worse, before you even start to re-enter the atmosphere in the first place, they will be burned up by re-entry heating long before your craft ever reaches the ground. Generally, I advise not fully deploying parachutes until 50 or 300 meters above the ground on Kerbal, but higher on Duna, and choosing to manually trigger partial deployment of your parachutes only after the parachute deployment unsafe warning has appeared and left the screen for the final time. If you deploy before the warning first appears, the parachutes will still burn up when you reach a low enough altitude where re-entry heating makes their deployment unsafe. This is one point many new players get stuck on. I wish I had known that the last time I went to Duna, because you remember I was hoping that the parachutes would deploy and save me, and they didn't.
Not the case.
Yeah, it's like they deployed like 2 inches above the ground. I was going, wait a minute, where were you guys? Finally, I wanted to take a moment to give a shout out to a cool mod I've recently discovered. Have either of you ever heard of the Final Frontier mod for Kerbal Space Program? Contrary to what the name might imply, it has nothing to do with Star Trek. Rather, it is a mod that awards your Kerbals ribbons for completing certain tasks, such as being the first Kerbal in a given game to make orbit. It is a nice little mod that does a lot to enhance the gameplay experience, and I highly recommend it. And we will post a link to that. Regards, North Star. Well, let's move on. We got some tweets this week. These are just a few.
Tweets.
Time for the tweets.
Okay, this is Middenpo. Kerbalcast, we're somehow alike. The first thing that I thought when he said Russian plus woman plus movie was Xenia Onatop. MK3424 says...
I learned the hard way, do not type Russian women into Google.
Yeah.
Because the links you get back, no.
So MK3424 says, Dre, deadly your entry. Beats by Dre? Heats by Dre?
I love that.
Yeah, you know my response to that? Defeats by Dre.
Defeats by Dre, yeah.
And
at which point Kanye West runs up and yells, no, Beyonce had the better one.
Yeah. This is from @Simpeternity87. In addition to drinking on dog tags, continue drinking while off on a tangent. May need to line up a few for the next episode.
I was going to say, do you realize that people would be like, I mean, they would be incoherent within the first 10 minutes.
Kerbalcast does not support alcohol poisoning.
Thermometers, just because.
Please listen responsibly.
Yeah, there you go.
And @DanGreen4114, just discovered Kerbalcast and am now binge listening to all the episodes.
All right.
Good luck, and we'll see you by now, really.
Yeah, I guess so.
If you're binge listening, we'll see you right now.
Yeah.
So, hey, how's it going, man?
I have to. I have
Cool.
to. I have to tip my hat to you. By the way, I know that you don't. I don't think you pre-read the tweets, and you hit those names, and you just say them. You know, I mean,
I actually, my first language is Twitter.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
No,
They should teach Twitter and
my
Twitter ease.
No, my first language is complaining about contracts, but
You know, the problem though is with my degree planning. You know, if social apps were like college classes,
Yeah.
I would have like all my credits in MySpace.
yeah, it's like,
You know.
hey, is anyone prepping for their Friendster finals?
Yeah,
So-
and I'd be out in the Facebook job market.
yeah.
But I know all about MySpace.
I've been, I got to poke somebody. I'm pretty sure.
Really? Is it the 1990s already?
Who's your top 40?
No, but I tip my hat to you, sir.
Well, thank you.
The way you blast through those.
Hashtag thank you.
Yeah. You know me, I'd be like, how do you pronounce this? And there's nothing more interesting to listen to than somebody that you cannot see saying to somebody else, here, look at this. How do you pronounce that?
Yeah. That's always good.
And then you hand the sound of paper being handed from one person to the next.
And while we're on the thank you hashtag, we want to thank
Yes.
our listeners and regular contributors for including Amy K for A Kerbal Life.
Yes, and it is time for A Kerbal Life. Okay, you have to do the summary.
Okay, so in the last one, some of us were in, some of us were out. It was
I remember a landing.
Yeah, it was a hokey pokey. Some of us were in the pod, some of us were out. And whenever we got to the ladder, we shook it all about. Play the episode.
Jebediah Kerman, a name that will go down in history as the first Kerbal to set foot on the Mun. Children will hold on. I'm getting reports that Jebediah actually set his head down on the Mun and not his foot. But the KSC has confirmed that is equally as impressive. Elsewhere, an expedition to the abandoned landing strip.
Jeb, are you sure it's a Kerbal face?
I'm pretty sure, MC. Oh, I know a good way to verify. Hang on.
What's that, Jeb? Jeb? Bob, what's going on up there?
Jeb is just rolling his face at the ground, MC.
Ah, of course. And why are you doing that again, Jeb?
Okay, I made an imprint of my face on the ground, and it looks nothing at all like the one drawn here. Guess it's not a Kerbal after all, MC.
Wait. Jeb, how exactly did you make an imprint of your face in the ground?
I put my face in the dirt and rolled it.
And what does it look like?
Well, actually it looks flat and featureless. Strange, I never knew that's how I looked.
Jeb, did you take off your helmet?
Of course not, MC.
Okay, good. Now, Jeb, take a surface sample and observe the goo you took up there while Bob plants a flag and chisels the plaque onto it.
Roger that, MC. Surface sample taken and stored in the pod. Observing goo.
Copy that, Jeb.
Goo still looks weird, but in a different kind of weird. Taking notes and storing in the lander. That's all the science I can do here, MC.
Copy that, Jeb. You can take it easy while Bob...
MC, I've just found an arrow drawn near the face pointing north of our position. I think... Yes, it's pointing to a cave about half a click from here. Permission for me and Bob to investigate?
Permission granted, but be careful, Jeb. I'm gonna get someone educated in here in case you find something.
Approaching the cave entrance now, MC. It doesn't lead in very far, but there's a loud rumbling noise coming from inside.
Be careful, Jeb. We've got a professor of Kerbal studies in here, and he says there shouldn't be life on the Mun. Then again, nobody's ever been there, so we can't be too sure.
We're going in now. It's a small cave with only one big opening the size of a... There's someone asleep and snoring on the floor, MC. They're faced away from me, but it looks like a Kerbal from here. I'm just gonna go around the front to see if I can wake... An alien! Repeat, there's an alien on the Mun, MC! We're evacuating to the lander now!
A what? Jebediah, are you sure?
I thought it was a Kerbal, but when I got around the front, that was no Kerbal! It opened its eyes and I'm pretty sure it was gonna eat us! Bob snapped a picture before we ran. We'll transmit that when we get back to the lander.
Mission Control to Mooner 1. We've received your transmission. What's your status?
Bob and I have locked ourselves in the lander, MC. Awaiting permission to leave before the alien finds us.
Yeah, about that. I showed the picture you took to the professor of Kerbal studies here, and he doesn't think it's an alien.
But it looked nothing like us, MC. What is it?
He says it's a girl.
A what, MC?
A girl, Jeb. A female Kerbal. Nobody's seen one before, but apparently there's a theory that they exist.
So what does that mean, MC?
Well, for starters, it means you're gonna have to clean up the lander.
A Kerbal Life was written by Amy Kettlewell with music by Lee Rosevere. Jebediah Kerman and Kerbal Space Program were created by Squan. The game is available for purchase on Steam or KerbalSpaceProgram.com.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to have to put my hat back on so I can tip it again. I have to tip my hat to Amy. Honestly, I had no idea that that's what that was going to be.
Yeah, especially with, like, last week's episode.
Yeah. I was convinced, and I said it at the time, and of course now I stand corrected. I was convinced that this was going to end up being a Kerbal leftover from an earlier update of the game.
Oh, yeah.
That had been stuck on the Mun.
Like a big old beard or something.
Yeah, because, every time they update, I end up stranding somebody.
Yeah.
And I thought, wouldn't it be funny if, if they're still hidden in the code somewhere and, one of these days you'll find them. And that's what I thought. And no, it's a female Kerbal.
Yeah.
So I tip my hat to Amy. Very good. Very good job. Amy, of course, provides us every week with A Kerbal Life, and we appreciate her help. We also want to thank our listeners and our regular contributors, which, of course, includes Amy. Everybody who has written in, sent us audio letters, tweets. Obviously, it's a big part of the program, and we couldn't do it without you, so thank you very much.
We also want to thank the subreddit moderators for Kerbal Space Program and Kerbal Academy.
They are nice enough to provide a link to us on our front page.
Yeah.
Or on their front page. If you like the music that you just heard in A Kerbal Life, that is provided by Lee Rosevere, which is, his last name is spelled R-O-S-E, just like Rose, and then Vere, V-E-R-E. And you can find several albums worth of music. Very good music. freemusicarchive.org/music/Lee_Rosevere.
Episode music comes to us from Professor Soap. Look for him on Facebook or at ProfessorSoap.com, ProfSoap.com.
And a big thanks to Ascalon, who posts episodes of Kerbalcast to YouTube every week so we can get the closed captioning. As always, you can contact us a couple of different ways. Kerbalpodcast@gmail.com. That's generally where we get our text letters from and our audio letters. But you can also get us on Twitter as well.
At Kerbalcast. You can also subscribe to us on iTunes and get the episode directly downloaded. And all episodes of Kerbalcast can be found at kerbalpodcast.libsyn.com.
You can also find us on Steam. Our usernames are Biff, Aldrin, and Tromo. Somebody added me as a friend just the other day.
Yeah.
And they when I clicked accept, they said, thanks for adding me as a friend. They said, I'm the one that did the Kerbal fart video.
Yeah, I got that too.
Yeah. And I was like, oh man, I am so proud to know you. That video was so awesome.
I don't know. Whenever I responded, I felt like I was sending him fan mail.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I don't care how big a fan you are of me. I'm a bigger fan of you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, I don't care how highbrow I think my tastes are.
Yeah. No matter how many downloads this podcast gets, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
We didn't make that fart video. He did.
Give me a Kerbal capsule that makes fart noises, and every scatological impulse in my body just goes to pieces. I could not. I mean, I laugh just thinking about that video.
Yeah.
If you have not seen the video, folks, you've got to see it. It's the Kerbal fart video. I can't even remember what it's called, but I'm sure Kerbal fart will get you there. If you would, well, after that little digression, I'm sure nobody's going to want to do this, but if you would like to support Kerbalcast, you can do so by donating to us at patreon.com. Just simply go there and search for Kerbalcast. Kind of help us with server fees and just some of the various costs that go into putting this program together every week. Well, that wraps it up. We are going to do after the credits. We're going to do a tribute to the life and career of the great Leonard Nimoy, who we lost this past week. And Amy K is coming back, and she's going to join us because, again, we're all huge Star Trek fans and all big fans of Leonard Nimoy. And so that is coming up with after the credits. But until then, we will see you next time. I am your LMP, Lunar Module Pilot, Biff Aldrin, our CMP, Command Module Pilot,
Tromo.
We'll talk to you next week. Until then, happy Kerbaling.
Thanks for sticking around. It's time for After the Credits.
And yes, it is, or as Nos likes to call it,
Kerbal After Dark.
And we're a little bit somber. And first of all, I want to welcome Amy K back. Hi, Amy.
Hello.
Did you have fun kerbaling while we were reading letters?
Oh, I did, yeah.
Yeah. See, we were working and you were kerbaling. I don't think that's fair.
I got the better end of the deal.
Yeah, well, I would say that. We are a little bit somber because we are recording this podcast on March the 1st, 2015. And just a few days ago, we were very sad to hear that Leonard Nimoy had passed away. And we're all huge Star Trek fans. And I don't know about you, but when it was like when Robin Williams passed away. Mm-hmm. When I heard about it, it hit me very personally. And I can say honestly that my first thought was, I wish that we had some sci-fi here, that there really was a Genesis planet.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Where we could, and we could do the whole ritual and back to Mount Saleya. And I mean, that thought, it really did occur to me because, we've kind of been through this. We've been through like a dress rehearsal of this before. So I don't know. How did it hit you, Nos?
I was out on the road whenever I heard about it. So like we were driving back from a job site and, one of the guys mentioned it and I was like, I had heard that he was having chest pains. He'd been like administered for that. Mm-hmm. And I'd kind of wondered when I first heard that news, like, oh, is this going to be it? Because he's 83.
Yeah.
And he's one of those people that whenever you hear about them passing on, like, you're sad for losing him.
Yeah.
But you know that it was somebody who was very much at peace with themselves in the world.
Right.
Like he was very content.
Yeah.
And it wasn't so much of a sad thing. It was just, more part of the process. And it's like somebody who was as influential and as much of a good soul as he is, or at least we knew him to be, then it's sad, but it's not devastating.
That's a good description of Leonard Nimoy. I mean, obviously I didn't know the man personally, but I always got the sense that he was a very centered individual, that he knew who he was. Mm-hmm. He was an unbelievably talented and incredibly intelligent person, and everything he said and just the way he carried himself brought that forth. So that's a really good point. Amy, what? Tell me, how did you take the news?
Well, it was very surreal because Leonard Nimoy, he was always been one of those people who was just always there. He had such a great personality. He was one of those people, like Robin Williams, that it made you feel good just to know that they were in the world. And when I heard about it, it was the day that he went, which was my birthday, and it was about 8 p.m. I was just sitting on the sofa, and the news came on, and there it was. And I was just in shock.
Yeah,
it was the same as Robin Williams, but for me personally, being such a Trekkie, and so having seen Leonard Nimoy in so many things and respect him so much, it hit me much, much harder than that. And even though I've never met the guy, he's had such a profound effect on me. I was absolutely devastated. Truly devastated.
We've all said we've never met him, but I mean, we're all talking like we have, and that is a real testament to how talented he was and how he was able to reach out and influence and just touch us all, don't you think?
He was one of those truly good people, one of those people who, whenever he said something, you would listen, and it would be profound, and it would be true, and it would always... of course he did, probably, he's human, but I've never heard him say anything that made me think he wasn't a truly wonderful human being.
Yeah. Well, what I thought was interesting was it's hard not to talk about Leonard Nimoy without talking about his work, because the minute you say Leonard Nimoy, what do you think of?
Star Trek.
Yeah. Star Trek. I don't know about you, but I mean, when I found out, I came home and immediately booted up Civ 4 just to hear that narration, just to hear that voice. And I have a feeling that this tribute is going to be a lot of us talking about Star Trek. Amy?
I firstly have to say I did the exact same thing. My first instinct was to boot up Civ 4, because I remember even when I first played Civ 4, I didn't know it was Leonard Nimoy, but having his voice come over, it was like, oh wow, Leonard Nimoy. He brings, when he speaks, which is what's perfect for a narration such as he did in Civ, he's got this gravity, he's got this profoundness just in the way he speaks, in his tone, in his audio mannerisms. And to listen to Civ 4 and listening to him speak, all the overlay, knowing that that's it, he's not here anymore, it was profound.
Yeah. Well, you made a really good point. Leonard Nimoy, he's one of those people that was just always there. And you don't think of him as being gone. He had in the way that he spoke, and in the way that he was written, anytime that he did speak in his roles, or the way that he spoke just in any presentation that I've seen of him, like expos or whatever, he always had a way of talking like that he was speaking about something that was far beyond himself. Right. It was like something prophetic, to where it was just more than what's happening in this moment. It was like universal truths that that he was able to witness, is usually the way that he conveyed them. Well, I remember reading when they rebooted Star Trek in 2009. Obviously old Spock is a character in that, and I remember reading the review, and they said if you will watch Leonard Nimoy's last line in the movie, they basically said just sit back and marvel at the master. Just the last line he speaks in the movie, just marvel at the talent and the gravitas that the man can bring. And I think if I remember, didn't he just say set phasers on stun and warp speed ahead or something like that? But I mean, he said it with such profoundness that you were like, yeah, set those phasers on stun. So, okay, question. Favorite Leonard Nimoy moment? And I know there's a lot, and it's hard to narrow this down.
The first one that comes to mind for me would be Star Trek, the end of Star Trek 2. Wrath of Khan.
Okay.
You know, the classic needs of the many line.
Right. Nos?
I would say in... just to preface myself, I have more experience with the later Star Trek, so I don't have much with the movies and everything. But in the reboots, the entire scene where he speaks about his interactions with I can't remember the Romulan's name now. Nero.
Oh yeah.
And like whenever he refers to him, he says a particularly troubled Romulan. Like he doesn't speak of him as evil or anything. He's just somebody who is struggling with something.
Right.
And I thought the way that he spoke that line, it shows that he doesn't show ill will towards somebody who did something like that. It just he sees that person had their own pain.
Yeah. Well, there are so many great Leonard Nimoy moments, especially from Star Trek. I'm going to pick one that is probably not, that a lot of people probably would not immediately think of. But you remember Leonard Nimoy was in both pilots of Star Trek. He was in The Cage, and he was in Where No Man Has Gone Before. Okay? In fact, if I remember correctly, he's the only actor, or the only character that survived from The Cage into the series proper. The very first episode that they actually filmed for the regular run, not the first one they aired, but the first one that they filmed was the Kerbal maneuver. And there is a scene in there. This shows you how well he understood his character and how he was able to bring so much with so little in the tiniest gesture. The Kerbal maneuver, if you remember, the Enterprise is being held powerless by a very large ship, and the ship has said to them, "We're going to kill you in basically 5 minutes." And Kirk is pacing the bridge, and he's going, "There's something I must have thought of. There's something I'm missing. There's something to do." And that's when Spock brings up the analogy about chess. You know, when you're outnumbered, it's checkmate, the game is over. And Kirk says, "Is that your best recommendation?" And here's my favorite Spock moment. Spock says, for an instant, he starts with, "I'm sorry." But he chokes it off in mid-word and says, "I regret that I can find no other logical alternative." That is Spock in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Even in that moment, he chokes off the emotion. Amy?
Slightly on topic, but on topic, and just something that you've just reminded me of. Have either of you two ever seen Fringe?
Fringe. The TV show. No, I have not.
Yes. He plays an amazing character in the whole series of Fringe. Not a regular, but recurring. And he is pretty much a human Spock. And every line of his is profound. And in the end, where he's slightly, you could say lost his mind, but he hasn't lost his mind. He is himself. He just has a view of how a new universe should be. This will make sense for anyone who's watched Fringe. Even when he's a bad guy in the sense that he doesn't want the same things as the good guy, he's profound in the way he delivers his rationale, his emotion in his voice, as a bad guy, as a good guy. It just made me think when you were saying from the Kerbal maneuver there. It's very hard to describe it when neither of you seen Fringe, but take my word for it.
Well, I know what you're saying, because this is something Nos has said quite a bit, and that is, bad guys don't ever think they're bad guys. They to me, the mark of good drama is even if you don't agree with what the bad guy is doing, you understand the rationale behind it.
Yeah.
They're not just the evil league of evil, to quote Dr. Horrible. There's a rationale and an understanding behind what they're doing. And I get the sense that that's what you're saying is that this character, even when he was acting at cross purposes, you still got the sense that this character believed in what they were doing.
And he's the first bad guy I've ever really rooted for emotionally in that sense. And that was because of Leonard Nimoy in that particular instance.
Well, I mentioned that Spock, as to the best of my recollection, was the only character that survived from the cage, the failed first pilot. Mm-hmm. When I was going through and kind of looking at his career and trying to find bits and pieces to use on Kerbalcast, one thing that struck me was Spock really, in a sense, became the heart and soul of Star Trek. Because think about it. He was in the first failed pilot. He was in the second successful pilot. He was in the original series. He was in Next Generation. Didn't he show up in DS9?
No, I don't think he was in DS9, was he?
I may not, but I mean, the fact that he was in Next Gen, which takes place in the same time frame and same universe, and then he's in the alternative universe of the rebooted series. So Spock has managed to be a part of virtually every incarnation of Star Trek there is. And I don't know about you, but with the reboot, the minute he steps out of that cave, that's kind of the moment where you settle into it like, okay, this is Star Trek.
Yeah. There was, in a class I was taking on media ethics, and you're learning how to properly make judgments and calls on what you can and can't do and what's right for, and you go into things like utilitarianism, the needs of the many, the needs of the few.
Right.
At one point, the professor was outlining the course, and he's not into sci-fi or any stuff like that, but the thing he said to us is, I'm trying to make you into a bunch of Spocks, a bunch of people who can see, the bigger picture and, see, stick by philosophies instead of, whatever sways you at the moment. Mm-hmm. And he wasn't really that into Star Trek, but for a character to have that kind of profound impact to where he uses that as a teaching example, it just really shows how well he drove the character home.
Yeah.
Because you think of how many other actors could have taken up that role of somebody who does profoundly, deeply feel emotion, but does not let it permeate their behavior.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the irony to me is that Spock was a role that even Leonard Nimoy wrestled with. He did go through that whole I am not Spock period. And then, as we talked about earlier, that sense that Leonard Nimoy is a very centered individual, he eventually came around to I am Spock, but I am more than that. Mm-hmm. Amy?
You've just said what I was going to say, actually. After the whole I am Spock thing, later and later into his life, the more he said, and even earlier in his life, whether he liked it or not, I think a large part of Spock was Leonard Nimoy, and large part of Leonard Nimoy was Spock.
Mm-hmm. Well, he brought, for example, the Vulcan hand salute. If I don't have the story in front of me, but he says that has Jewish roots that he brought into the character. Mm. The Vulcan neck pinch was something that he brought in. Another iconic moment, the episode The Naked Time. Amy, do you remember? That was the one where they get infected and they lose all of their inhibitions and all their emotions come out. Do you remember the big scene after Spock has been touched by Nurse Chapel and he goes into the conference room by himself and he just falls apart?
Yeah.
That scene was not in the original script.
Really?
Originally, what they had written was Spock was walking down the hallway weeping openly. And you remember there was the mad graffiti artist, the guy that was running around painting things, painting subversive slogans and things all over the Enterprise. Mm-hmm. Well, he was supposed to run up and paint a mustache on Spock while Spock was crying. And Nimoy said, I think we're missing a huge opportunity here. A, I don't think Spock would walk down the hallway openly weeping. And B, you're playing this tremendous moment for comedy. And that's when he came up with the idea of Spock going off by himself and losing it.
Yeah.
And from what I understand, they were right on the edge of overtime. They were almost out of shooting time for that day. And so they said, you have one take. You've got one chance to get this right. And Nimoy nailed it.
In one take?
In one take. Because they didn't have the budget for a second take because the crew would have gone into overtime.
Yeah.
So there he is, you know, and Nimoy himself has even said he was aware of the fact, because the camera does kind of a half circle move around him. I mean, he even said that he was aware of the camera moving around him, but he knew that he had to get it in one take. And you know, and that from the original series, that's one of those iconic moments. And it would have been a laugh line if he hadn't have chimed in, again, with this tremendous understanding of his character.
I think that is like a good tell of somebody who respects the art and also the character, to where they'll do more than just what they're assigned.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, well, that's what's going to happen. Okay, fine, here's the paycheck. You know?
Right,
right. Like, he actually saw, it's like, well, no, to actually utilize this moment and make the most of, you know, this story and, you know, like, be respectful toward what it could be instead of just what happens to be, you know, on the page. I think he really showed it in times like that, to where he was always willing to set himself to a higher standard.
Honestly, I truly believe that if it weren't for Leonard Nimoy, and I'm going to give props to William Shatner too.
Yeah.
If it weren't for those two, I don't think we would be talking about Star Trek today, because William Shatner brought the hero, but there was a heart there. Mm-hmm. Nimoy brought the head, but there was a heart there as well. And the fact that they were opposites, and yet they were similar. Kirk's weaknesses were Spock's strengths, and vice versa. And it was that incredible friendship that, to me, really made the series. And, you know, you don't see that in The Cage. And they haven't really gotten to that in the alternate universe yet. I mean, they really haven't fleshed out. The end of Wrath of Khan, Star Trek II, was so profound because at that point we were looking at a friendship that, from our perspective, had been going on for 15 years. Whereas you get into the alternate universe and the friendship is still very new. So, you know, comparison scenes don't have the same impact. But I know that Nimoy went through a period where he had trouble with being Spock. But I would think that as an actor, the fact that I made such a mark in people's lives, in popular culture, even to non-Star Trek people like your college professor, the fact that you had such a profound impact and were able to hit with such a character, I mean, I would go to my grave feeling very fulfilled, you know, and I just, you know, I would say that, you know, I already, you know, I miss the man, I miss the character, I miss having Leonard Nimoy in the world, and I think that is an incredible tribute to him.
Yeah,
I agree.
True to form, Leonard Nimoy even seemed to know what the last perfect tweet would be. Nos, do you want to read it?
Yeah, the last tweet that was on his account was, "A life is like a garden. Perfect moments can be had but not preserved, except in memory. Live long and prosper."
Is that not amazing?
Beyond words.
For someone to send out that tweet as just a tweet, it's profound anyway.
Yeah.
But the fact that it was his last tweet.
Like the last mark he makes in this social media form.
Yeah. It's like, I would love to send out a tweet like that at any point in my life. But the fact that he sent it out as his last tweet, it was like his final gift. Amy?
And it wasn't even like this was the only profound thing he said. He was always full of these things, always full of these things. So if you browse through his Twitter, you'll see so many profound statements.
Yeah. Well, Leonard Nimoy was one of those rare individuals. And I mean, I think I can truly say for all of us, he really, I think he touched all of us. I think he had a profound impact, and he will definitely be missed.
Irreplaceable.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's go ahead and wrap up our After the Credits. I just want to say, I would like to offer my deepest condolences to his family and to his loved ones. And I would just like to say to Nimoy himself, thank you so much. You have been there my entire life. You had an incredible impact on me. I have nothing but respect for your talent and for your body of work and for your life. I hope that we're all so fortunate. So, goodbye, and you will be missed. Amy?
I think what would be perhaps a nice tribute, and what's something that Leonard Nimoy himself would want, I think when we finish this After the Credits, I think the last thing we should do together is as he would have done on his behalf and say, live long and prosper.
That's a good idea. Okay. On the Nos, did you have a last comment before we go?
I don't know. I just say that we are and forever shall be his fans.
So. Oh, I love it. That is so perfect. Oh, my. Okay. All right. Well, we're going to close this on the count of 3. We're all going to say it. Okay. Are you ready, everyone? Okay. 1, 2, 3. Live long and prosper.
For everything there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven.